A quorum being present, the Committee on Homeland Security will come to order. The committee's meeting today for consideration of House Resolution 235, directing the Secretary of Homeland Security to transmit certain documents to the House of Representatives relating to the Department of Homeland Security's research, integration, and analysis activities relating to the Russian government interference in the elections for federal office held in 2016. Chair announces any requests for recorded votes be rolled to the end of the meeting, and he may recess the committee at any point. Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Before considering the resolution introduced by the gentleman from Mississippi, Ranking Member Thompson, I'd like to agree with a statement he recently made about this committee. Just last week in a press release about this resolution itself, he said, "Our committee has a long-standing and unique history of bipartisan cooperation on national security matters, and I believe we can put politics aside for the good of the country." I could not agree with the characterization of this committee more. That is why House Resolution 235 seems unnecessary to me. In the ranking member's own words in 2009, quote, "A resolution of inquiry is a nuclear option when the House has been stonewalled by a federal agency. The Department of Homeland Security has been forthcoming and responsive to this committee," end of quote. This was the first committee Secretary Kelly appeared before just days after his confirmation. He answered tough questions in a public setting for hours on an array of issues at the department. He has operated in good faith with this committee and reached out to provide classified briefings to our members without any prompting or request from me. Additionally, the department has provided several briefings on this topic to our members and staff over the past few months. Just 2 weeks ago, we held a public hearing entitled "A Borderless Battle Defending Against Cyber Threats," where my first question to the panel concerned the Russian cyber attacks. As I have stated repeatedly, this is not a Republican or Democrat issue. It's an American issue, and any foreign government interference in our elections is unacceptable and should not go unpunished. But this resolution is not the appropriate means to conduct bipartisan oversight when the department has operated in a transparent manner. I would respectfully ask the gentleman to reconsider his position on pursuing this nuclear option. I hope the ranking member will move forward with me in a collegial matter which respects process and starts with a conversation. We will continue to conduct oversight as required by the Constitution. I also commit to have Secretary Kelly appear before this committee in the near future so members can ask him about this very issue in a public setting. This type of resolution is reserved for federal agencies and departments that are non-compliant, which is not the case here. This action, in my judgment, only further politicizes these matters, and for these reasons, I oppose House Resolution 235. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of this committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I start, I'd just like to express my deep condolences to the people of Syria. The images of gassed children is a chilling reminder of this humanitarian crisis. This was a war crime, and it is a siren call for action. And I trust that all of us as members of Congress will govern ourselves accordingly, both with respect to refugees and other people who might try to flee that area, and in some instances look to America as a safe haven to come. As I said, Mr. Chairman, this resolution of inquiry was filed simply because a lot of us are anxious to get information that we've yet to receive or have the opportunity to review. The Russian government's interference campaign against our democracy is not fake news. Earlier this year, the issuance of the intelligence community's assessment of the campaign brought to light what this committee has been hearing about in our classified space since well before November 8th. Speaking on behalf of the entire intelligence community, the Director of National Intelligence stated in the January assessment that Russia's goal were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump, and Moscow will apply lessons learned from its Putin-ordered campaign aimed at the U.S. presidential election to further influence efforts worldwide, including against U.S. allies and their election process. Since January, the Russian influence campaign and contacts between President Trump's inner circle and Russian operatives have become a kitchen table topic in American households. Americans want answers. In fact, just last week, in a Fox News poll, 66% of respondents said they want Congress to investigate the Russian hacking and influence campaign. Last Thursday, I introduced this resolution to ensure that the committee receives material from the Department of Homeland Security to answer the following critical questions. What is the full scope of the hacking activities that the Russians took against our electoral system? What, if any, operational impacts did these activities have on our electoral systems, including voter rolls and voting equipment? What information did DHS have to determine that the Russian activities did not directly impact vote tallying? Approval of this resolution could jumpstart a committee investigation. Make no mistake, by directing an expansive cyber hacking and propaganda campaign against not only our democracy, but also that of France, Germany, and the Netherlands, Vladimir Putin has made himself enemy number one of Western democracy. Like FBI Comey said, I believe that Putin considers his efforts to be successful and that we should expect Russia to continue to cause mischief covertly and overtly to further erode trust in Western democratic political institutions. While I support legislation to establish a 9/11-style independent investigative commission, I recognize that at this time there's not enough support on the other side of the aisle to advance it. Unlike this committee's acts and commences an investigation unless this committee acts and commences an investigation that specifically addresses DHS's efforts to identify, address, and mitigate Russian interference, the only prospects we've had for a House-led inquiry rests with the Intelligence Committee. I do not need to tell you that the House Intelligence Committee has hit a very rough patch and is struggling to carry out its extensive investigation. Even if things get back on track in the Intelligence Committee and they are able to reach bipartisan conclusions, it seems unlikely that they will do a deep dive into the Department of Homeland Security's efforts before, during, and after the Russian attacks. As such, now is the time for the committee to launch its own bipartisan inquiry. We've had an opportunity today to restore Americans' faith that we can put partisanship aside and come together, as we historically have done in the past, to seek answers that the American public deserves. In addition to that, Mr. Chair, we have all, as members of Congress, been told in no uncertain terms that the Russians did do certain things to impact the November elections. I think because the designation by DHS as critical infrastructure of our election system puts us squarely on point for this resolution of inquiry to be offered. Members of this committee need to see the information. They need to have an opportunity to read and digest that information. So going forward, we do whatever we need to do to secure our electoral systems so that Russia, China, Iran, or any other nation state can't intrude on our democracy. Our democracy is actually looked upon with fervor by countries all over the world. If Russia is allowed to compromise our system of how we elect our leaders, then we put everything we stand for at risk. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the ranking member, and let me just say for the record that we were actually in agreement on the substance here. I've been very outspoken after our classified briefing that you and I attended with the DNI and Secretary, both in October and many briefings since, that this is a very important issue. And it's not the substance I disagree with, it's the procedural way to go about doing this. I believe the normal committee process moving forward, conducting its oversight responsibilities under the Constitution, is the appropriate and proper way to do this, and not the nuclear option, as you referred to, by doing this resolution of inquiry. And so I think that's important to state for the members here at the committee. I'd like to advise committee members that I will be strictly adhering to the 5-minute rule as directed by Rule 7B of our committee rules. I now call up House Resolution 235, directing the Secretary of Homeland Security to transmit certain documents to the House of Representatives relating to the Department of Homeland Security's research, integration, and analysis activities related to the Russian government interference in the elections for federal office held in 2016. The resolution was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the resolution.
H.Res. 235.
Without objection, the reading is dispensed with and the resolution is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized on the resolution? Ms. Watson-Coleman is recognized. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Longeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this markup in the first place and for your continued leadership on such issues as cybersecurity issues. I'd also like to extend my sincere thanks to the ranking member for introducing this resolution of inquiry to help restart the House's stalled investigations into Russia's election interference. Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to understand how we got here. On June 14, 2016, the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike released a report revealing that the Democratic National Committee had been breached by 2 separate Russian actors. As much as I'd like to claim that upon reading the report, I foresaw the information operation that would erode the very faith of our foundation of our democracy, I was not that prescient. On June 14th, I released a statement that began, "It should come as no surprise that to anyone that political parties are high-profile targets for foreign intelligence gathering. Political parties and campaigns have been breached before, and I thought this incident would be no different. However, much as criminals have learned to monetize your personal photos or other information through the use of ransomware, within weeks of the hack being discovered, the Russian government began to learn how much chaos could be caused by the leaking of a few emails. Now, I'll admit my failure of imagination to conceive of the breadth and the deceitfulness of the Russian information operation, but I've learned from my mistake, and I will not again underestimate Russia's desire and ability to manipulate our institutions. I also believe it is my duty to help ensure the U.S. government, including the Department of Homeland Security, does not make a similar error in judgment again. Doing so is particularly urgent as Russian actors are already making their presence felt in campaigns occurring in many of our European allies right now. In hearings before the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities, where I serve as ranking member, I've pressed military officials and outside experts to help us prepare for the next wave of information operations that many agree are inevitable. But I also believe that without a full accounting of the 2016 election interference, we may be dooming ourselves to repeat the mistakes that made the Russian operation so effective. And I have joined many of my colleagues on this committee in calling for an independent commission to review the facts and give a full accounting to the American people. But I also strongly believe that Congress has a role to play. To that end, I've written to Speaker Ryan and introduced legislation that would create a select committee dedicated to investigating the Russian hacking and election interference. In my mind, this is the best path forward, and recent events regarding the House Intelligence Committee's investigations bear that assessment out. However, I also do not believe that we can wait for the Speaker to act. This committee clearly has an important role to play looking into DHS's role into the Russian operation, especially as it relates to the U.S. government's response. Fully understanding how DHS approached the incident response surrounding the hack and the subsequent attribution is essential to inform our future defensive and counterinformation operation activities. It is also vital that we identify any gaps in our country's cyber protections that may have been laid bare by the Russian hacks. The Chairman and I have been saying for nearly a decade that cyber attacks would have substantial geopolitical consequences, and I can think of no better evidence of that prediction being borne out than last year's elections. But I believe, and again, I'm sure the Chairman would agree, that this is only the beginning, and we must continue the work of this committee to improve our cyber posture. This resolution of inquiry will aid us in those efforts, and I hope all of my colleagues will support reporting it favorably to the House, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady from Texas, well, I believe, does it give you the list? I think in terms of order, I think Ms. Watson-Coleman was, but would the gentlelady like to yield to the gentlelady from Texas or not?
I don't know. Are there members on the other side? I don't see any hands raised. If the gentlelady from New Jersey wants to go, I will pause. Mr. Chairman, if I might go,
Gentlelady's recognized.
if I might go after the gentlelady from
Okay.
New Jersey.
Ms. Watson-Coleman
if I
is
could,
recognized.
Because of my commitment.
The order is in seniority, I've been instructed, but Ms. Watson-Coleman.
I want to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for your comments also. And I want to thank you and my ranking member, because I do believe that I'm fortunate enough to serve on a committee in this particular environment that has demonstrated more bipartisanship than the other committee that I serve on. But having said that, I really still believe that our investigation and our accountability into this issue with Russia and its involvement in our election infrastructure has been rather anemic, and that we have a responsibility to be as robust as possible. Recognizing that the Department of Homeland Security determined as a result of Russian interference that our system, our election infrastructure is indeed a critical infrastructure. They did that based upon information that they saw, information that they collected, or information that they were given. This, I would like to understand why that designation has been assigned to this, as well as the fact that I think that we have asked states to come on board and to use our help as we move forward in ensuring that something of this nature doesn't happen again. But states aren't moving as quickly or as expeditiously or with this sense of urgency, and that might be because they don't have the benefit of all the information that they need as well. I know that when I go back to my district, everyone is always asking me, what are you all doing about Russia interfering in this election? What are you all doing about looking into Russia's relationship with this administration, just period? I want to talk just a little bit about this space that we work in as the Committee on Homeland Security. I'm not even going to deal with the fact that I think that Congress in general is very anemic in dealing with Russia's relationships with our current administration. There is no downside to our being as rigorous and as insistent upon the accountability of the information that we need in order to make a determination how this cannot happen again. There is no downside to recognizing that all the people across this country in red districts and blue districts, in progressive districts, conservative districts, and ultra-conservative districts want us to get to the bottom of this. You can't go home to your district, and I can't go home to mine without being asked, what are you doing about this? So I am grateful that my ranking member has raised this resolution of inquiry. I am grateful that we're having a chance to discuss it here and get it on the record. I certainly would like for my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to express here in public what they're expressing quietly in their districts and with their close cohorts. We all know that this is troubling. We all know that it is un-American to be in this situation. We all know that this adversary that we have here is not only trying to threaten our democracy, he and this government is trying to threaten Western democracy. We have a responsibility to ourselves, but we have a responsibility to democracy as well. And so I urge all of my colleagues to support this resolution that is before us. And I thank you for the time, and I yield back.
Joe Lay yields back.
Chairman.
Any other member wish to be recognized? Ms.
Chairman.
Jackson Lay.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the ranking member for what I think is an enormously thoughtful and important resolution. I was pleased to yield to the gentlelady and make this comment that I have been on this committee since its creation. And with that in mind, I think I join my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to say that the status and importance of this committee continues to grow, probably to our dismay, more and more every year. This is one of, if not the most important committee in this Congress. It is important because its duty is to protect the homeland and to be on the domestic front lines of ensuring that the American people are secure. With that in mind, there should be no quarrel by my colleagues, my Republican colleagues, on a resolution that simply tries to provide the necessary information done by the Homeland Security Department, research, integration, and analysis activities relating to the Russian government interference. We know that it was done. And the reason that we know that is because 17 security agencies in 2016, including former Secretary Jay Johnson, which has, as we all know, who was held in very high esteem by the chairman and ranking member and members of our Republican friends and our Democratic colleagues on this committee. He joined in signing in on the conspicuous and obvious swaying and interference of Russian operatives in the 2016 presidential election. In addition to that, Director Comey, ultimately who refused to sign that document, to the dismay and questioning of many, for the obvious was obvious, but then has stated over and over again since that the Russian operatives / government at the highest levels interfered with the 2016 election. Now, why is this a continuing important matter? Let me take from an unclassified document the following. In quotes, we assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Coming from the report by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and a document found amongst that report, including an analytic assessment drafted and coordinated among the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and the National Intelligence Agency. But there is more to this. As we interact with our European colleagues are continually reinforcing Russia's role in interfering with elections in France, possibly even discussions around the election in Denmark, if I can recall correctly, and others, the German election. This is dangerous. In addition, Russia is dangerous. Russian head of state or head of government, not head of state, one of their ministers indicated it wasn't Assad's fault that people are still dying with the chemical attack. We know that there is an ongoing investigation regarding the collusion with operatives from the administration, our administration, and Russia. We know that the National Security Advisor had to step down for lying. It is not our charge to lie to the American people. We are obligated to tell the truth. The Thompson Resolution is that truth. And if we do not do it, we are derelict in our duty because we are failing to secure the American people. I want to submit into the record, NBC News article, Russians hacked 2 U.S. voter databases, officials say, asked unanimous consent. I'll name them all. House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, statement by Ranking Member Congressman Adam Schiff, asked unanimous consent. Secret CIA assessment says Russia was trying to help Trump and the White House, asked unanimous consent. And then political Trump-Russia timeline. I asked unanimous consent. I think there are 4 documents, Mr. Chairman, if I could. I asked unanimous consent. I conclude and
without objection, so ordered.
I conclude and yield back. We have always been bipartisan, as will often be said by many members, and we frankly relish in that because it is our duty to secure the American people. Mr. Thompson's resolution is a simple inquiry to make us the most effective committee in hand to deal with the national security of this nation. I ask my colleagues to support the Thompson resolution. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any member wish to be recognized in the resolution? Ms. Demings.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you so much for your statement that we can put politics aside for the good of the country. I share those sentiments because I've seen us do it many, many times before. Mr. Chairman, I have taken 3 oaths in my lifetime. I took the first oath in 1984 when I was sworn in as a police officer, the second oath in 2007 when I was sworn in as the chief of police, and the third oath 3 months ago when I was honored to be sworn in as a member of the 115th session of the United States Congress. Mr. Chairman, I've taken every oath very seriously as I swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Our freedom and our democracy defines the very essence, the very foundation of who we are. Therefore, we must be relentless in our efforts to stop any threat to our democracy. Any threat to our democracy must be handled thoroughly and swiftly, and we should not rest until we get to the bottom of it and hold persons responsible for it accountable. As a 27-year law enforcement officer, a chief of police, a person who has conducted numerous criminal and internal investigations, we must move forward and allow the facts to lead us to justice. Make no mistake, Putin's government, by the covert and overt actions it took to interfere with not only our electoral processes, but those of the Netherlands, France, Germany, is an enemy to Western democracy. As an enemy of Western democracy, they have been emboldened by their success with respect to the 2016 election. And in view of the FBI director, they'll be back in the future. They'll be back for future elections. Will we be ready? Will we hold them accountable? The Department of Homeland Security seems to share the FBI's views about the threat posed by Russia, and following the election, designated election infrastructure as critical infrastructure to ensure that prioritized federal security assistance is available to election administrators. We must have a full accounting of Russia's efforts to subvert our democracy. Approving this resolution to require DHS to furnish key information would be the first step, but it'd be a major step towards providing answers to the American people and preventing future damage to our democracy. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any other member wish to be recognized on the resolution? Ms. Berrigan.
Thank you. When I first heard about the Russia incident and the interference in our election, I was deeply troubled. But then I went on to read both the classified and unclassified versions of the report. I continue to encourage people who have not yet read the unclassified version to take a look at it and read it. It should trouble all of us. The election was in November. We are now in April. I understand the wheels of government can turn slowly, but where is the urgency? Why is there no urgency that we are not immediately asking for answers, demanding an investigation on both sides, when a foreign entity has gone out of their way to undermine democracy and undermine our elections? I get the same questions all the time in my district and when I travel. What are we doing? How come this is not bipartisan? Why isn't there a sense of urgency? This resolution today I see as a transparency and efficiency in getting this thing moving quicker. The American people deserve answers. We as this committee deserve and have a duty to do that investigation and need the information. What is in the documents? Why can't we have them as members to take a look, to start an investigation? I think this is a critical issue. I would hope that there would be bipartisan support on this. The term nuclear option. What's so nuclear about getting information and getting answers to the American people and having Congress start the oversight of their duties and doing our work? I'm going to support this resolution. I believe that this is a manner in which we can speed up the process in a critical issue that is not just facing our democracy, but democracy across the world. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any other member wish to be recognized on the resolution? Mr. Correa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, I want to thank both of you for the opportunity to address this most important issue. All of us sit here today as electeds. We know the value of democracy and of the sacredness of the individual vote in our democratic system. So therefore, I believe that any suspicious entanglement attack upon our electoral system, any threat to keeping the sacredness of the individual vote in our country should be investigated to the fullest ability of our powers. I fully support this resolution, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. Any other member wish to be recognized on the resolution? Let me just say, I think all the members have made very good points that I think, all agree on in a bipartisan way. No one is more concerned about the interference of a foreign adversary on our democracy than me. And I know I share that with the ranking member. And I share that with every member of this committee. And I've been very outspoken, both in the media and elsewhere, about my concerns about what happened, because we know for sure that it did happen. And I think the question before us here today is not whether we're going to be exercising our constitutional oversight obligations in a bipartisan and transparent way. The answer to that is very clear. Secretary Johnson basically declared that the election system was a critical infrastructure. The Department of Homeland Security conducts cyber defense through the NCIC. Hopefully we'll pass our bill naming it the Cybersecurity Agency to give it more priority and more prominence to defend the nation from all attacks from foreign adversaries against our power grids, electric, energy, but also our elections. I think the question before us today is, do we move forward in a normal committee process, exercising our oversight obligations, or do we go to what was referred to by the ranking member in 2009 as a nuclear option, which bypasses this committee and puts it directly on the floor of the House? I believe that working with the ranking member, we can obtain this information from the department. A resolution of inquiry is reserved only in the rarest of cases when a department is not cooperating with the United States Congress. I see no evidence of that here. In fact, to the contrary, the department has fully cooperated with this committee on all matters related to this issue. We have had many committee briefings, and we just had a full committee hearing on this issue, and the Secretary will be before this committee next month to answer these questions that I think are critical, as the members have stated, critical questions that demand answers to not just this committee, but the American people. So I'm committed to moving forward in the normal committee process to examine this issue, conduct the oversight, and get the proper information in a bipartisan, transparent way. But it is premature, in my judgment, for a resolution of this type to be passed out of this committee when we haven't even given the department an opportunity to respond. We haven't even made the request for this information. There are many opportunities to do that. And so I would ask that all members on this committee, because this is such an important issue and I don't want it to be politicized, that we work together in a bipartisan way to get this information that the American people deserve. And so with that, we are going to take a very short recess. I really sincerely mean this. I thank the members for their comments. I know they were sincere, and many good points have been made. And as chairman of this committee, I intend to seek out the truth in the Russian interference.
Mr. Chairman,
The chair recognizes the ranking member.
how long do you anticipate the recess being?
5 minutes.
Thank you.
So the committee will take a short recess. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Hurry up and get these people here.
What is, so there's no, do I ask that? Committee will come to order. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to insert in the records letters that we have members on the Democratic side have sent to the department requesting certain information pertaining to the Russian hacking incident.
Without objection, so ordered. Any other member wish to speak on the resolution? There being no further discussion of the resolution, the committee will move to consideration of amendments to House Resolution 235. No amendments were pre-filed with the clerk of the committee. Are there any amendments to the resolution? There being no amendments to the the question now occurs on reporting House Resolution 235 to the House with an unfavorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion is agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I demand a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. The clerk shall call the roll.
Mr. Smith? Mr. King? Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers votes yea. Mr. Duncan? Mr. Duncan votes yea. Mr. Marino?
Yes.
Mr. Marino votes yea. Mr. Barletta?
Yes.
Mr. Barletta votes yea. Mr. Perry? Aye. Mr. Perry votes yea. Mr. Katko? Yes. Mr. Katko votes yea. Mr. Hurd? Ms. McSally? Aye. Ms. McSally votes yea. Mr. Ratcliffe? Mr. Donovan? Yay. Mr. Donovan votes yea. Mr. Gallagher? Yay. Mr. Gallagher votes yea. Mr. Higgins? Mr. Higgins votes yea. Mr. Rutherford? Yay. Mr. Rutherford votes yea. Mr. Garrett? Aye. Mr. Garrett votes yea. Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzpatrick votes yea. Mr. Thompson?
No.
Mr. Thompson votes no. Ms. Jackson Lee? No. Ms. Jackson Lee votes no. Mr. Langevin? No. Mr. Langevin votes no. Mr. Richmond? No. Mr. Richmond votes no. Mr. Keating? No. Mr. Keating votes no. Mr. Payne? No. Mr. Payne votes no. Mr. Vela? No. Mr. Vela votes no. Mrs. Watson-Coleman? No. Mrs. Watson-Coleman votes no. Ms. Rice? Ms. Rice votes no. Mr. Correa? Mr. Correa votes no. Mrs. Demings? No. Mrs. Demings votes no. Ms. Berrigan? Ms. Berrigan votes no. Mr. Smith? Mr. King? Mr. Hurd? Mr. Ratcliffe?
Have all members voted? Does any member wish to record or change his vote? How am I recorded?
The gentleman is not recorded.
I vote aye.
Mr. McCall votes yea.
Clerk will report the tally.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there are 14 yeas and 12 noes.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion to report unfavorably is agreed to. Without objection, the motion reconsiders laid on the table.
Mr. Chairman.
Ranking member is recognized.
Before I make my closing comments, I'd like to recognize Cedric Haynes, senior staff member who will be departing before the next hearing. And I'd just like to personally thank him for his support, leadership all along. And just like a lot of good staffers, somebody made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So we just like to personally thank him for the work that he's done on the committee.
And likewise.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2L, I ask that members have 2 calendar days to file with the clerk of the committee supplemental, additional, or minority views on the resolution ordered reported by the committee today.
Without objection, so ordered. There being no further business to transact, the committee stands adjourned.
You make sure.
That's-